Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
I'm
Hi, Keith.
great.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Keith.
Greg.
Hello, hello.
So, Jeff, before we started recording, you understand Greg's from Minnesota, and our condolences to him for his team losing last night.
Yes, I appreciate your kind sentiments.
I was kind of hoping to play Minnesota too, but it wasn't in the cards.
Well, you got to remember that as good a season as Darnold had, he was a former Jet. So
Yes,
we do understand that,
he always had that hanging over him.
that he had that hanging over him, and reality set in last night. I can't even fault him. The Rams had, 9 sacks. How do you play quarterback, when you're constantly, on the run? So unless you're Patrick Mahomes, that's another story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so let's get started. So Jeff or Jeffrey, does it matter?
Jeffrey,
Jeffrey's good.
doesn't matter.
So Jeffrey, thank you for joining us today. And
You're having me.
Yes, thank you.
so to just get us started, tell us a little bit about Nine Dots and yourself, your background, and what you're doing currently.
Thank you. Nine Dots now has kind of two pillars to it. It's a marketing company, and when I started 8 years ago, I'm like, what do you need? And so I've done a little bit of everything from brand strategy, social media, websites, logos. But in the last sort of 3 years, we really focus on visual content. So I produce video and animation for marketing. So whether that's a brand video or an explainer video for an ad or your social, it's when you need content and you want it to be really good, you come to me and then I make something awesome for you. But about 2 years ago, like many, fell into the hole of AI and have just been fascinated by it. And so in that last year period, I really, dug deep. And so I just sort of launched softly Nine Dots AI, which is me as an AI speaker and consultant, really. I have a couple workshops I do. And basically my hope is that I think everyone is experiencing what I refer to as AI overwhelm. As you guys know, it's every day you turn the page, there's some news story on it, and there's a million things going on. And what I think I'm pretty good at is helping to simplify and clarify to sort of get people to be able to use it rather than just, and use it well, effectively. Because a lot of people are playing around with ChatGPT and they're like not even aware of some of the ways you can make better use of it and some of the other tools. And there's
Sure.
it's hard to. I'm in it all day, every day, and it's still hard to keep on track of everything that's going on. But I think there's some fundamental ways to approach it, like any technology, that are important.
It's so interesting. I'm a big fan of AI, and I've been a big fan of what I like to call tech tools in
Mm-hmm.
general for dummies like myself. And just to give you a little background, and as I said earlier, sales and marketing is my thing. And then we'll give you a little history about how Greg and I got together and why we find our information very valuable to either young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general. But the world of AI and the world of tech tools in general started for me 40 years ago when I had opened my first optical store. And I was in the eyeglass business. I was a retail optician, and um, my first computer, and I've mentioned this in some of my episodes. I'm not sure if it was in that one, but nevertheless, didn't even have a hard drive. That's how far I go back. So it was, we were still dealing with floppy disks, and my first hard drive was 40 megabytes, which
Well,
really.
I've joked with people in class. I teach at Temple University and at Wharton, and one of the things when we're talking about technology, I said, "Does anyone know what a BBS is?" And if they do, I'm very surprised. But I was on bulletin board systems as a teenager with the dial-up and the whole, before the
Yeah.
internet, having chats with people in real time, which was so cool. But now it seems so silly. So I'm familiar with the advent of technology. I consider myself an early adopter, and I consider myself. I came up with a term which you may like, which is an NTG, a non-technical geek, because I'm not a coder and I can't be
I'm
an
gonna with you.
illustrator, but I love technology and I love what it can do, and
I
trying
like
to
that.
learn how to use it. So non-technical geek, that's me.
No,
When did you first get exposed to AI, Geoffrey?
Well, it's funny, as I've kind of delved into its history, obviously knowing that it's been around since the 50s. I remember very distinctly in high school floppy disk of Eliza, which was the early AI kind of therapist, where you'd ask the question and it would be like a therapist number, give you an answer. What makes you feel that way? And so, in some ways, that was my first experience without knowing of what AI was. But in the latest kind of generation of like generative AI, because obviously I know we've been using it for Netflix and for Amazon recommendations and a lot of the things that are predictive AI that we've had on for a while, and people just weren't really hadn't given it a name. And so obviously generative AI, launch of ChatGPT, world goes crazy, and now AI is everywhere. But for me, at the time, so my son was couple years ago. So he's 15 now. So he's probably 13. And we're in the car and he's in an entrepreneurial program and he's trying to think of a name for his business, which was homemade dog biscuits. And he had somehow learned about ChatGPT and was on it getting dog biscuit, company names. And I'm like, what is that you're using? And so my son introduced me to ChatGPT in kind of this weird, like, I didn't know what it was, and then it just went crazy. And so that was my first sort of entree into what generative AI could do in terms of brainstorming. And I'm an idea guy, so it was all like, wow, that was pretty like snap of the fingers, and there are 50 names to think about, and some are good and some are bad. But AI is the most impressive starting point for pretty much anything you're going to try and do, especially
Yeah.
I think in marketing.
I would agree with that. As a marketing guy, it's made my life so much easier. So as I mentioned earlier, I mean, Greg and I, we have different backgrounds. So, Greg, you want to explain your background, and I've already pretty much, explained what my background is. But AI can play a role for someone like Greg. And Greg, would you say you're not very technical? Would that be an accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid of technology, but I probably haven't embraced it the way that I should, especially in the last few years. I mean, I feel like earlier in my career, I was more likely to embrace technology and learn new things, and I need to get back to that. But a lot of times in my career, I would oversee an IT department, because it fell under that administrative group. My background is finance and operations, so it wasn't unusual for me to be leading a company where I had an IT director reporting to me. So even though I didn't know probably I couldn't geek out with him, but I was always able to, I think, do a good job of take his technology focus and turn it into practical applications for the organization, not just something that was cool to do, which
Right.
is where I think we're at with AI today. But okay, how's it going to benefit the organization? What's this technology going to do that the company's going to look at and say, hey, we need that in order to grow our business or become more efficient or whatever the application might be.
Yeah, that resonates with me because I think it's a shiny new object that everyone
Yeah,
gets excited
yeah,
about, and some of the use cases and some of the demos they show are really cool, but aren't going to help me grow my business. And I
right,
think so. It's the
exactly.
application of like, well, what are you trying to achieve, and then reverse engineer and see whether AI can help. And I'm a big proponent, and I kind of help people on the roadmap of AI. And one of the big pieces is use case identification. And I think it's really important if people think about what is it you do all the time every week that's kind of annoying. Maybe AI can help make it a little less annoying, or at least you'll spend less time on it. And I think, again, AI's here. It's not going anywhere. And I think businesses, if they don't embrace it, will be at a competitive disadvantage very soon. It's just, it's too useful a technology that if you're not using it, you're missing a trick that's going to end up, I think, hurting you in the same way digital transformation. If you hadn't learned about what was going on with the internet and, websites and everything else, like, we couldn't imagine a company not having a website now.
Right.
No.
I think we'll be there in 3 years about, I can't believe you're not using AI. Like, it will become
I agree with that.
Like, what?
Well, it's really interesting you say that about websites, right? Because think of it, it used to be when websites first got developed, they were just sort of like these, online billboards, right? You sort of promoted your company. Today, you're doing business on websites. I mean, placing orders, tracking orders, right? You're invoicing your customers. I mean, it's a tool now that's so integrated into your business, you probably don't even think about it anymore. Whereas when it first got started, it was like something you just had that sat off to the side, and you didn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah, and I don't remember the exact context. Someone was saying when technology becomes boring, that's when it becomes useful, like just accepted. When we eventually don't even think about it, we take it for granted. That's when it's kind of actually reached its kind of saturation. When like, oh yeah, I
love that, Geoffrey.
Talk to my phone all the time. It's like right now it seems it's that cool, new, scary, even a little some people, and it's like, I don't know about that. It's funny to think that's, my kids will be like, what? How are you not using, and there was a big world economic report that just came out, and one of the things they're talking about was that younger people are not going to work at a company that doesn't let them use Gen AI. And on the flip side, the Gen AI skills are going to be something that's going to be expected of people entering the workforce.
Yeah, the new term is prompt engineering is going to be a whole career for somebody. So
I disagree.
Saying I don't.
Yeah. So here's my feeling, because I thought about that in particular, and I read an article, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, maybe 18 months ago, that said prompt engineering is the new hot job. It's going to be $100,000 to $200,000. And I was like, everyone's like, oh my God. I think it's not, I think the way it's playing itself out is in two ways. One, prompt engineering is not going to be a job. It's going to be a skill that's going to be expected of you. How do you talk to AI in a way to get the best results? And two, I think the platforms themselves are being trained to help you do that better. So that even when we're putting in prompts now, they're not taking the prompt literally, they're taking it and then adjusting it. And one thing that I've done in the past is I'll put in a prompt, give me a result, and I'll even say, what was the prompt you used to give me that result? And it's different than what I gave it, because it's interpreting it. So I think there's a real benefit to learning how to prompt well, just because then you understand the process of how it comes to give you the answer it does. And so I think
it's interesting.
And getting the nuance of things that work better.
Yeah. So I always like to use the analogy, is this the main course or is it the appetizer? What will it be? Will it be the main course 3 years from now? Or will it just be what you just said, is that it's a skill, okay, that is really required. If it's not on your I don't even know if people use resumes. I've read articles where resumes going away. It's like, if you can't, as a business owner, interact with somebody, whether it's just like we are or in person, and understand whether this is somebody that has the skills and the knowledge and the background and the personality to be successful within your company, a resume is not going to do it for you.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about some of the softer side of things and those things, because there was a point where I had read a discussion about technology, like technical skills for a long time were kind of the things that kind of propelled you forward. and soft skills were given short shrift wrongly, in my opinion. But now, because computers are so sophisticated at being able to do a lot of that technical things, that it's actually the softer skills that are going to matter more. And for me, I consider myself an AI humanist. And I define that as using humanity to effectively use AI. So it's all about how the good questions you ask, the way you think about it. And then how do you use AI to be more human? And that can be in terms of the objective of what you're trying to do, as well as the promise of AI for me is it's going to take away, it's going to save me time on things that I don't really want to do, so I can focus on those more human-centered activities, having conversations with employees, having conversations with my clients or customers, having time with my family. That I think is when we say, if you're saving this time, what are you going to do with it? And I think that's, I go speak at conferences and they're like, well, what's going to happen there? I'm like, it's going to make this environment, actual, communication directly live and in person, matter that much more. And I think if you look at even with COVID and how we were kind of all Zoomified, going to live events now is almost not a novelty, but it's like, oh, it's a distinct experience, a distinct human experience that we need as social creatures. And I don't think that's going away. I think that's gonna, as technology gets better at doing the things, it will enable us to have more of that.
I agree. Human interactions are critical to our mental health.
100%.
We can't be
Absolutely.
talking to computers all the time. And I do yell at my personal AI assistant, when I'm not happy with the results. It's this crazy, and I say that tongue in cheek, but what's really interesting is that I've gotten to the point where I love the way I use AI, and I'm sure there's much that needs to be learned for someone like myself and Greg, that it almost feels like it is my personal assistant. I mean, that's the kind of feeling I have. It's like, what I would normally do, 10 years ago is I'd have to have somebody within my organization, and you have to have a meeting and the brainstorming, and the amount of hours I've gotten back, not to mention the savings and costs, because you still want to go to the human side and say, okay, I've put this all together. Okay, now I can bring it to my team in a more prepared way where they can read it and regurgitate it and understand it and discuss it. So that to me is the strength of AI.
Yeah, and it gets a lot to the difference between replacing humans and enhancing the process of what we do. And for me, the phrase I always gravitate towards is, keeping the human in the loop, and so it's both when you start interacting with AI, the human element in terms of what questions am I asking, how am I, that prompt engineering in such a way that I'm going to get the best results. But even those results are not definitive. And I think that's, people who are using it that way are going to get into trouble, number one, because obviously hallucinations will get better, but you have to verify it, that it's actually answering the question of what you're trying to get the answer to. And then to me, as a marketer, is it in your brand voice and, those kinds of things. And therefore, and it usually gets, I've heard people refer to like the 80-20 rule of AI. Like it might get you 80% of the way to that report, but you're going to need 20% to make sure it actually gets over the finish line and doesn't sound like every other report that it's done. I can't recall where I first heard the distinction is, if you have a task that only requires the result to be adequate, AI is awesome. It gives you adequate all day long on its own. If it requires excellence, whatever the project may be, then you better have a human in the loop, because that's what's it's gonna take whatever AI may give you and take it from adequate to excellent.
Yeah, and that, as a marketer,
That's interesting.
You'll appreciate what I'm saying. As a marketer, there's a need for speed, there's a need for quantity, there's a need to not be perfect, because otherwise you cannot be voluminous in your creations, but there's also a need for excellence in certain scenarios. So the excellence, you can't do without the human elements. I'll give you an example. Greg and I, we do our podcast, obviously recording, we download, we upload to our YouTube channel. I take the transcript, okay? I then create from the transcript like an article based on the content that we just created. So it's not made up, it's not pulled from somewhere, unless I ask AI to cite certain statistics, which we'll do.
Sure.
But that's just, you're citing them, okay? It's in there. It tells this, it says what the citation is within the article. But the point is, there's the combination of the two, okay? And as you just said, there's a place for adequate, but when it comes to, if I'm doing something on behalf of a client, okay, who wants me to do something for them, I can't give them adequate that I just pulled off of AI. I have to understand the client, I have to ask the right questions, I have to understand what they're looking to accomplish before I go and create something. So it's fascinating.
Well, it's interesting.
Jeffrey, maybe you could talk a little bit about a specific example you've had with a client, and obviously you don't need to mention any names, but just how you've integrated or used AI in a marketing project of yours.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple examples, but before I answer that, I want to just touch on something Keith said, because I came up with a term that about the intersection between computer intelligence and human intelligence, what I refer to as connected intelligence. It's that having that connection between the two, and that's where the magic is, because connected intelligence is more powerful than either of them on their own. And so I've used it a couple different ways with clients. So I produce video and animation. So every animated, as an animated project, all starts with a script. So I've had AI help me with scripts. I'm a writer, but it can say it in certain ways. And again, that prompting, that conversational AI of saying, I want it to sound in this tone. And then it takes it, I'm like, that's not right, let me fix that. No, and so that human editor is so important once you use it, but it gets me a draft to work with, something to work with. And, it's like that writer's block that people have. You should never have that anymore with AI. There's just no excuse to not have writer's block. The other way I use it, which isn't for clients, but I think is interesting for sales and marketing, is in terms of prospecting and research. You want to learn about anything, AI can help you in a great way. And I'm working on this kind of workflow where, so let's say I want to learn about manufacturing. I was talking with someone the other day. I don't know much about manufacturing. I can go on Perplexity. That's my preferred search tool. I think it's better. I still think that it's giving you better results than Google. That's just mine. So you go in and it'll give you a summary, or it'll give you, and I'll be like, well, find me a report. And so you go, and here's the state of, manufacturing in 2025. And it'll give me a link to an article, a PDF, a report. I then can take that and put it into Notebook LLM, which I think is the most wonderful gift that Google gave us. And it'll give you, are you guys familiar with Notebook LLM?
No, I'm not.
No.
Oh, I could do a whole hour on this, but basically, so Google has
a tool. I love tools.
It is, so it was the darling tool of AI last year, without a doubt. If you talk to 100 AI people, they'll tell you Notebook LM, and basically it works like a normal LLM. So you pick the source. So you can give it a website, you can give it a YouTube link, you can give it text, you can upload stuff. And then it'll create stuff. And then it gives you the opportunity to create a briefing document, frequently asked questions, a study guide. But you could do that with ChatGPT. You could do that with most of the other ones. What made it stand out and become so popular was a particular feature called audio overviews. It basically took the content and created a mini podcast with two people talking about whatever source you gave it. And so what I've done with it is I've taken a prospect. I'm going to meet a potential client. I take their website, I put in Notebook LM, I click generate audio. It creates a 10-minute, 15-minute podcast all about that potential client. So I'm driving to the meeting, listening to a podcast just about everything about that client based on their website. And so it's an easy way to learn and research whatever it is you're doing. And it's done very well. Now other companies are trying to replicate it. But it's quite fun. In fact, I can share here, can I?
Sure.
All right, let me show you. I'm going to show you a fun one just because I think it's, but you also get the idea of what it's going to do. So I've taken some just as examples to try and kind of showcase what it can do. And so this is one, I'll pick one that I think, yeah, this is a good one, I think. So I'm going to share one with you that all I gave it was the text to the Declaration of Independence. And this is what it created.
All right, so today we're diving into one of those documents that practically screams America, the Declaration of Independence. But get ready to go beyond the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, is because, trust me, there's a lot more to uncover here than they teach in school.
It's true. And it's easy to forget, looking back on it now as this kind of symbol of triumph. But we really have to remember what was actually going on back in 1776 when this thing was written.
Yeah.
Tensions were off the charts between the colonies and Great Britain. This wasn't just like a little disagreement. We're talking full-blown rebellion brewing.
So why?
And it goes on for another 8 minutes.
That's just amazing. So
It's amazing.
So, this is very exciting. So I'll give you just a little bit about some of the things that Greg and I are working on outside of the podcast. So we have HR tools that we sell, okay, which one of the key components of these HR tools is an engagement platform, okay, for employee engagement. And it ties into everything to do from the beginning of when you're hired, onboarded. So, and it's the communication tool for the company. So what you just showed me is like, I could use that tool to create these mini podcasts as content for
100% for onboarding, for training. Like
this is, I get very excited when I talk to marketing people. Greg, I'm sorry. I mean, but Greg gets excited too because we both, are busy. Greg owns a business, I own a business. So basically, we're always looking for information that we can share on our podcast, okay, that would be valuable to anybody that's listening. So having you today has really been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But Notebook LM, I think the thing that's clear about you both of you, and that people who listen to podcasts is that they're interested in learning. They're interested in improving themselves and finding ways to do things better. And if you want to learn anything, AI can help you do that, And so I think it's not just about, yes, it can help you in your operations and it can help you in all the different things, but it can also just teach you how to be a better business professional on whatever topic you want to be,
Yeah.
So that research part, and I think the thing that's so magical about Notebook LM, aside from those two AI voices sounding, I listened to a podcast about the training of it and how they use speech patterns to have those. I mean, it's fascinating, but it's a conversation. So it's not just an audio book where you listen to a book and you they're talking back and forth, and there's something about how human that is that I think really resonates whenever someone hears one, like, wow, it's yeah. So again, for what it does it really well. And people, I think, understandably have been like, this is awesome. So, and I'm one of those people.
So let me ask you a question.
Do you do any marketing work without incorporating AI?
No.
Or is it in everything you do?
Somewhere in the process, it'll be involved.
Okay.
I can't think of, there may be some tasks within a project that maybe I'm not needing it for,
Right.
but my brain is always like, how can I use AI for this? Like that's how I start my conversation, because I think asking that question, because of the power of these tools, should be something that becomes a habit. You may say, you know what, for this project, for this task, I don't need AI, or AI won't give me what I need. But unfortunately, for better or for worse, in my experience, it usually can enhance, add something to whatever piece of marketing I happen to be doing.
It makes a business of one or two people seem like they have 10.
Yeah.
You know, because of the amount of work that could get done in rapid fire fashion. So I don't want us to forget about, you know, you're here today, and obviously you go on these types of podcasts, so because you're looking to further your own brand and your own marketing, and you know, we want to be able to provide value for you. Okay, so
Appreciate that.
It's not just about us. Although my wife always tells me, honey, it's not about you.
I'm familiar with that phrase.
Yeah, so but I like to think it's somewhat about me, but more importantly, if we provide you value, and there's always something that comes with that without asking. I don't have to ask. So tell us what you want people to know about yourself, obviously, and 9dots, that you think would be really important when they're seeking to find these kinds of services, because obviously you differentiate yourself in a certain way that you think is valuable.
Yeah. First of all, I do these things, yes, in part for building brand, but I like having engaging conversations. And so for me, I get value from that. And if someone listening to this gets value out of it, then I've won. And you know, that to me is but if people want, you know, what I say is I share a lot of, you know, information with people, and I'm always happy to have that conversation. So if someone's like, I'm thinking about, but from a, you know, business perspective, I am now helping people overcome that AI overwhelm. So if they're like, we've started using AI, but we're kind of stuck, that's someone I can help. You know, that's someone, and then as a speaker, it's like, well, we have a conference and we need to bring someone in who knows a little bit about AI and can talk about, that's another opportunity for me. Those are the main, and then just content. So I produce video and animation if there's someone looking for that. But from the AI perspective, I'm really looking to share my both expertise, fascination, practicality, and enthusiasm for how you can take AI in a systematic, simple approach to improve how your business runs.
Is there a particular size client that you find?
I like to work with kind of middle market, you know, so that maybe they have a CMO, or they'll probably have a CIO. I think once I've worked for small businesses and medium-sized businesses. The reason I say middle markets, they usually have budget. So there's just a practical thing of like, I'd love to help everybody, but I have to feed my 3 children and my wife and the whole rest of it. So fortunately I have to charge. So but it's really, I think, people who understand there's value to be gotten, you know. I remember, I haven't written this blog yet, but the difference between convincing someone and educating someone. As a marketer, as a business owner, if you spend your time trying to convince people to buy what you have, you're going to be like Sisyphus, rolling that boulder up. Whereas if you see someone who has an interest and is curious, then your job is to educate them about the value, you know, and then you say, here, and they either say yes or no. And so I don't want to spend my time with people who are not at least open to seeing the value that AI can bring and what I can do in terms of helping.
Greg, is there anything?
I would think you were going to be a busy speaker over the next few years. Geoffrey.
It's starting to finally have some traction, yeah, and I love it. I really do. I just have been booked to go down to a pet conference. So people who make pet products, and I think that's the thing is, I'm not an expert in these particular things, but I think that AI has a universal relevance because of the way that it can really attack the basic fundamental business needs that every business has.
It's really fascinating. I do see, and Greg, I'm sure you feel the same way. There are probably applications within what we're doing. Greg and I both coach. That's part of our core offerings beyond, and you're coaching whether they bought something else or not, you're always coaching. So basically, your knowledge and experience could be valuable in our tool set, whether it's for ourselves or even to offer to our clients. So I think, we certainly should continue our conversations and see where we can, possibly work together.
I would welcome that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the same thing, Keith. I mean, Keith, one of the things Keith and I try to do is make sure we have folks who we know and trust and have connected with as resources for our clients, because I can see this
I'm the
coming
same.
up. Somebody asked me a question, do you know somebody who understands AI that would help me with my business? I can say yes.
I think that's the thing. It's about being resourceful as a coach, as a consultant. I don't have all the answers. But having those relationships. And that's why when I'm teaching students, I say the most important thing about success is relationships. So I'm talking about technology, I'm talking about AI. At the end of the day, it's always going to be about who you know and nurturing those relationships and having a human-centered approach to AI and to business in general.
Well, that's what I really like about your approach, Geoffrey, is you haven't lost sight of what's really important. You recognize that AI is a tool to still get what we want, which is building our relationships. And it's not a replacement for that, but it's a supplement.
Exactly.
Can't lose the human element. So, Geoffrey, is there anything that you'd like to close with as we end?
Thank you. That's the first thing. To you guys, to anyone I know there's a lot of content out there. These guys are doing a great job. And so make sure you subscribe and do all the things that they may feel weird about saying, but I can say, as a fan of the show, a fan of these guys, they're out there bringing value to you. So keep watching. How's that?
Appreciate it.